Okay, so here is the big new development as of about 2 weeks ago in New York, the passage of the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act. If you look at the title here, yes, there's an H in marijuana. That is the way the law is written. There is a reason for it, even though the overwhelming um, prevalent usage is marijuana with a J. Uh, Laws for many years have been written with marijuana being spelled with an H. I am not going to waste time to get into the explanation, but suffice it to note that the Marijuana with an H Regulation and Taxation Act uses both spellings, and for operative purposes, finally just says, you know what we're going to do? We're going to call this cannabis. So, if you want to get more technical, we're going to talk about cannabis issues here than marijuana. And I'm not worried about the difference or similarity between the two. So this was signed by the governor March 31, 2021, with a lot of the elements effective immediately. It legalizes recreational marijuana use generally with some limits. It does add specific protections for employees who use marijuana outside of work, which we're going to talk about. And there is still, as ever, the question of, well, does it matter that marijuana is still illegal under federal law? So all of this description of what's lawful, again, this is according to New York State, in New York State, and under New York State law. Marijuana is still a controlled substance at the federal level. Take your chances with the FBI or the whatever other federal agencies might think that you're doing something illegal, the DEA, etc. These are now lawful activities in New York at present, as of the end of March, for people who are 21 and older. You can purchase, display, possess, obtain, transport up to 3 ounces of cannabis and up to 24 grams of concentrated cannabis. Again, I'm not going to get into the really technical things. So you can have a little bit of marijuana on your person. You can buy it. You can transport it. You can even give it to another person as long as they don't pay you for it. And as long as they're over 21, you can smoke it. You can use it, whatever that means. You can ingest it. You can consume it. Um, unless it's otherwise protected by or prohibited by state law. That means things like you can't just do it in a public uh, restaurant or store or something like that. The places where you can't smoke, you also can't generally use cannabis. Um, you can have cannabis paraphernalia the same way you can have cannabis. And you can assist another person 21 years of age or older to do any of these other things that you can do as a person 21 years or older in New York. The one thing you can't do at this point in New York is buy marijuana legally. So somehow you can get it. You could legally buy it in another state, then it becomes problematic when you cross state lines because the federal government certainly wouldn't like that, and or at least the laws on the books at the federal level wouldn't agree with that practice. Um, you can't steal it legally, obviously. You also can't grow it, although you will be able to at some point in the future once that provision of the law takes effect. Anyway, somebody is smoking, using, possessing a small enough amount of marijuana or other cannabis product, they are not breaking New York law. What does that mean vis-a-vis the workplace? Section 201D of the New York labor law, which has been on the books for a couple decades now, protects employees' off-duty use of lawful consumable products. Historically, this has primarily meant alcohol and tobacco. Some would consider this the smokers' rights law, and there was a lobby for it in that sense. So you can't fire employees who smoke outside of work. Well, now you cannot do that for employees who use cannabis either. The law just basically says consumable products, including, quote, cannabis in accordance with state law. Seems to be a direct effort to acknowledge that um, cannabis is legal under state law. So as long as you're following state law, you're okay. There is still that ambiguous question of what about the fact that it's illegal under federal law? But there's no doubt that the New York legislature has enacted this law assuming that it's going to protect people in New York as of now to use cannabis outside of work and not lose their jobs. There are restrictions. Again, it has to be outside of work hours. It also has to be off the employer's premises, and it has to be without the use of the employer's equipment or other property. If you have a company car, you can't smoke it in the car. Actually, you can't smoke marijuana in New York in a car anyway. That is one of the specific restrictions. But whatever. So if you're not using any company equipment, you're off the clock and you're off premises, then you have protections. Protections are not absolute.